Hi all, let's look at another fascinating game from the recent TCEC Season 14 Superfinal. This was played in round 17 of 100. Leela was playing white. We have actually the Budapest defence, so this early e5 from black, which aims to rupture white on the dark squares a bit, and sometimes get this pawn back after knight g4. Here, in the book given to both of them, white actually clings on to the pawn, accepting structural damage, but that does get the dark square bishop without a counterpart, which can actually be a dangerous piece sometimes. You'll note though that there's a blockade square here, which maybe black can make use of potentially. Queen e7, white clings on to the pawn with queen d5, so this is a well-known line so far. If white doesn't cling on to the pawn, then black just regains that pawn and should be okay, because white's structure is compromised. There's enough compensation. It should be about equal. So queen d5, and now f6, so turning it into a kind of gambit. Another alternative here, queen a3, has been seen before. White can usually play something like rook c1 and not worry about the a2 pawn. This kind of position, white's got a small edge. So f6 here, not bothering with queen a3, is the main move. E takes, knight takes, queen d3, d6, and we have now g3. Now black castled, bishop g2, bishop g4, h3, bishop h5. If black tries something like bishop takes f3 with the idea of knight e5, well, let's have a look at this. This position, for example, this is good pressure for white. White can sometimes just try and win a pawn, knight b7. If we have a look at this again, knight e5, white can just give up the dark square bishop and again win a pawn. So yeah, the b7 pawn's a bit vulnerable here. So bishop h5. Now interestingly, Leela actually didn't just routinely castle. This might permit knight e4 here, which would lead to near equality with this lovely blockade square available to black. So for example, let's put it on there immediately. This is actually quite stable for black, even though a pawn down, this bishop isn't so liberated. So Leela does something radical in this position after bishop h5. Can you guess, if I give you 5 seconds, white to play here to try and avoid this blockade maneuver? What would occur to you to play, I wonder? Okay, it's actually a counter pawn stack, c5. It opens up the bishop, and yeah, this is a very, very interesting move. We have d takes c5 accepting that. If black ignores it, then white just undoubles the pawns, and with a comfortable position like this, big advantage. So d takes, so we're equal on pawns, and you might think, well, isn't Leela throwing away the advantage from the opening? It's actually a very interesting position here. It's quite unusual, the Budapest, and to actually fill the up and down sides for both sides, it's a bit tricky sometimes with unusual territory. We have here the move rook ae8 being played. White basically has a pawn majority, quite significant pawn majority here of these pawns. If we look at this pawn majority here, there's only 2 pawns there, and black's pawn majority is kind of nullified a little bit by the double pawns. This provides some interesting squish potential for squeezing on the king side, which is an undertone to many of the variations in this game. And also, of course, white has this now quite dangerous f4 bishop. So bear that in mind. So rook fe1, king h8. We have queen b5, knight d8. So protecting b7 with a knight retreat. So it's a little bit awkward for black. Rook ad1. So the queen's kind of annoying looking at d7. Perhaps white might consider sometimes bishop g5, and yeah, looking at d7 even more, or knight e5. In fact, Stockfish kicks the queen away from there. Queen b3 is chosen. Queen a4 also seems as though it might be plausible. For example, this position is certainly an idea to switch the queen over here. That's a nice position for white as an idea. If we look at this, if bishop takes, then this is also just quite nice for white. So anyway, the queen went to b3. It seems queen a4 might be plausible. h6, and we have now the move c4, and now black, Stockfish committed to bishop takes f3, just giving white the bishop pair. Quite dramatic, the bishop pair against the two knights. But white still has this mass of pawns over here, 4-2, to play with. It's interesting now, the decision actually was to offer two rooks for the queen with e takes, believe it or not. On bishop takes here, well, first of all, before we get into this, why would black do that? On bishop f7, it seems as though white can really celebrate the big pawn majority here. For example, knight e5, let's say just a waiting move as an example, g4, and you can see that white can actually make significant squishing progress if left alone for too long. This just gets like to be a menacing position. So it's a really interesting feature, this aspect of the Budapest defense in this particular variation. If black doesn't do anything too quickly, could get overwhelmed by basically this pawn majority, which is going to do some dents and damage to the king side as well. So yeah, bishop takes f3 seems like the first radical kind of decision. If we look at this again, this position, and say b5 trying to exploit the pin, white can just like sack a pawn there and still have a really nice comfortable position with great pawn mobility. Black's pawns are just wrecked here, so black would really not be interested fundamentally in doing this generally. So yeah, this is an interesting decision, and we have another really interesting imbalance game now. After e takes, Stockfish gives up the queen for the two rooks, which normally is a good trade. It depends how active those rooks are, but in this particular circumstance, this pawn majority, although it doesn't look fantastic at the moment with the double pawns, is actually really dangerous with the bishop pair. Those put together, the bishop pair plus this 4-2, can be a lethal weapon. Rook e7 is played. If knight e6, the bishop can drop back, controlling d4 as well. At this position, you can see white can start to stretch out with a big advantage very soon. Stretching out with f4, f5, the squishing could start later, or even for g5. Lots of possibilities there. So we have rook e7, the rook going back. Queen b2. Now it looks that, you may think at first glance that queen b2 looks at f6, so kind of preventing rook e8 for a tactic. For example, bishop takes h6. Actually, that's not really the case here, because the rook's doubling actually as a tactic in its own right. They can invade via e2 with tempo. So for example, bishop takes h6 here. White can't rely on taking, but rook e2 happens, hitting the queen and f2. And this is now quite dangerous. If left, then the rook's double, and then g2 drops. And if here, then rook takes a2, black's fully equalized. So although the queen's looking at f6, it's not a big deal now. The bishop actually blunts the rooks for the moment. So that's the key thing. Bishop e3 stopping rook e2. We have b6, yeah, protecting c5. The bishop was also hitting c5. g4, and you can see the pawns are starting to stretch out now. a5, f4. This is really quite an impressive majority of pawns looking to potentially crush the opponent's king as well. Knight e4. We have queen b5. Very interesting maneuver. Queen b1. Seems to be waiting for what Stockfish is doing. Now queen d3. Bit of dancing around from the queen. Now here knight f6 was played. You might wonder, well, why can't black keep this up? The problem is, yeah, behind the scenes, white can really stretch out. If black doesn't do anything, let's say king g8, white can just build up like this as an example. Put the bishop here more optimally, and then play for g5, to really tear the king apart. The king's blocked from g8 here, and it gets extremely dangerous. For example, like this is winning material. So it just can really get out of control, this 4-2 pawn majority behind the scenes, if black's not careful. So we have this retreat here, knight f6, bishop f3, and the knight goes to g8. You might just think this is really mysterious play from Stockfish. Now Leela just improves this bishop here. Now that the e2 entry point is covered, this bishop can reroute to the much more optimal and dangerous for the black king diagonal. Now this diagonal is much more dangerous than the bishop staying on e3, not doing much. So rook f7, and in fact, before even doing bishop b2, we have here bishop c6 hitting the rook, and that's nudging the rooks away. Now king g3, rook e7, king g2. So controlling the possibility of black can't castle the rooks, black can't double the rooks now for the e file. Rook e6, and in fact this bishop now takes time to reroute. It has time to reroute to create a nice queen and bishop battery against h7. So here white is now able to create that bishop and queen battery, threatening checkmate in one. And you might be surprised here, but Stockfish actually played knight g6. The problem is white has an ideal optimal position now with the bishops. If g6, that weakens the dark squares, which white can now pounce onto with bishop b2 check, queen c3 threatening mate at g7. So the king tries to evacuate. This would lose the h6 pawn, and black's really crumbling here. For example, if black tries anything active, then losing the other pawn, it's really quite hopeless. After bishop e5, that shuts down any problems with the rooks. So this looks like a very, very bad thing that black is forced to do. And after f5, yeah, there is a tempo gain, just in time it seems, but there's a huge issue here now attacking the rook basically. After rook e7, there's a huge problem after bishop f4, that black's position is not very stable here, and the reason again is this squishing pawn majority behind the scenes, that this kind of blockade on e5 cannot be held up. Black plays knight d f7. If knight d7, by the way, then bishop takes h6 seems rather good here. So knight d f7, queen g3, and the problem is h4 g5, for example, will have menacing threats. This pawn majority is extremely volatile. We have knight d7 here. If black tries to keep the e5 going, as an example, h4, g5, and this is tearing black to shreds. If black has to play g6, because, for example, king f8, g6, queen h4, now huge threats like queen h8, and this is just like leading to checkmate sometimes, like this, for example. So yeah, this is just too dangerous. This variation, in this variation, f takes g6, white would have a big advantage if that was played in this variation. So yeah, it seems as though it can't be held, the e5 knight. So it retreats, offering c7, bishop takes c7. White still has this very, very dangerous pawn mobility with the bishop pair. Rook c8, h4. So squishing with g5 is in progress. Knight f6, bishop f4, rook d7, bishop e3. And now, after rook cd8, g5, the black knights are being pushed back. Another key rerouting, bishop c1, knight d6, bishop b2. Black cannot take on c4 because the bishop just actually keeps on this key diagonal for f6, and the knight is actually a tactical liability here in its own right for tempo gains like queen g4. For example, rook f8, queen g4 hits the knight, and black really hasn't got a chance here after knight a3. Bishop b3 is strong. For example, c4, f6, just immediately f6, and black is in huge trouble. For For example, taking f takes g7 check, and it just crumbles with that pinned rook. G takes. So French think checkmate, and if black has to give up a rook and can't recapture, then queen e4 is actually mating like this. So it's absolute devastation, it seems, after knight takes c4. Let's just check this again. Instead, knight d6. Again, f6 is really strong here, looking at the rook on d7. So that, like that, for example. And if the rook moved, then f takes g7 is checkmate. Look at these amazing bishops in this position. Yeah, it's just carnage around the king. When we looked at bishop b3 instead of c4, if the knight stumbled back again, f6, the bishops are just absolutely wonderful with the queen on g4 here. A really crushing position indeed. Knight e8, and the bishops wait around controlling all the entry points after bishop c3. White is very solid here, controlling these entry points into the position. Rook f7, queen f3, rook d6, king f1, the rook's double, queen h5, and now white is playing for f6. Rook e7, we have f6, and this is absolutely a desperate state of affairs for black. Stockfish gave up a knight for 2 pawns. It's pretty hopeless, this position. It's just crashing through. Clearly, if it's not given up, it's just crashing through. Here, for example, if g takes h6 is the strongest, with the idea of h7 and that knight's stranded. It's going to be 1 with check. Alternatively, if the black rook goes to e6 here, then white just pushes through with f7, forking the 2 knights. If the rook goes to d7, then that leaves e8 hanging. So it's actually pretty diabolical, this position of this f6, which, yeah, there's not really too much choice. Just one more peek at this line with g takes. So h7 is an imminent threat. Now here, so we looked at knight c7, h7, and you might think, well, hold on, is there anything there at all? What about rook e6? The thing is, h7, knight e7, okay, the knight's escaped for a moment, but it's interrupted e8. Queen takes e8 check, and then checkmate there. So yes, f6 is absolutely winning material, it seems. Stockfish trying to play the best possible choice here. So, diabolical position to be in here. Giving up the knight, it's all over, basically, bother shouting. After king f8, both engines fought. It was +10, basically. The game was ended in this position. So, yes, you could argue, well, Stockfish was handicapped with this opening, but it seems, Leela was able to draw on the rematch. So, there are some openings which really seem to favour the neural network approach rather than the classic alpha-beta pruning approach that Stockfish kind of represents. And in this opening, yeah, it seems the trump cards, Leela really liked the trump cards, that pawn majority and the bishops here, and played it extremely well, not letting black really blockade the position permanently. The early pawn set with c5 was very interesting, and just the squish potential in general, the rerouting of the bishops, a very impressive positional and kind of tactical game. If we want to pursue the final position a little bit more, say bishop f5, queen f4, bishop takes f6 could be very dangerous, winning some extra material, for example, like this. It's all falling apart as an example. Okay, let's go back to the final endgame position, end of the game position. If you enjoyed this game video, then please click on the top left box, which should appear shortly. Become a member at chessworld.net. Play against other YouTubers. You can also test yourself on the variations covered in this game and other game videos from the improved menu puzzle books option, which also links to the annotated game. And I may show you a bit of a sample of that puzzle book for this particular game shortly. Comments, questions, donations, see the description. Like, share, subscribe with the notification bell. Really appreciated. Thanks very much. Addendum. All the variations we covered have been turned into interactive puzzles at Chessboard. Just log into Chessboard Improve menu, puzzle books. Here I'm keeping things simple to minimize my embarrassment. 1 to 10 checkmates with white and black only. So I applied that filter. G6 I think here, and we had Queen H4, check, and then Bishop G5. And it's not often you get to checkmate Stockfish. So in these fictional variations you can. F takes G7 is checkmate. Take that Stockfish. And this third one, H7, that interrupts the knight on E8. You take there, and then Queen here. Checkmate. So 3-0. Okay. Now have fun with that. You can change the criteria and explore other books as well. If you go next book, if you like your criteria, just go on to the next book, which is another game we've had variations for, previous video. So I hope you enjoy that as well. Thanks very much.